This is Gabriel Gonzalez for Cageside Press, here with one of the top UFC flyweights, Miranda Fear the Maverick, ahead of her fight with Jasmine Jasudavicius on June 10th, potentially in Canada. Miranda, I'm going to start there. You talked about it on social media. Being in front of a crowd, wherever it is, maybe Canada, maybe United States, maybe overseas. How do you feel about that for this one for the first time in a while?
Yeah, I'm gonna be really excited. It'll be my second fight ever in front of a crowd. My last one being against Erin Blanchfield. I lost that one, but it was also a COVID crowd. We didn't have that many people in the audience. So I'm really excited to be in front of a crowd, have a numbered card. Don't know if it'll be prelims or main card yet. I wouldn't doubt if it is on prelims, but I'm really excited. I'm excited to go in there, show what I've done, show what I've had improvements wise in this camp throughout the last few months. I showed it in my last fight, the fight before, but I feel like this one will really come together. I've had long enough to adjust, long enough to put the grappling, the striking, everything together. And I want to go in there with a lot of ferocity. I want it to almost be a repeat of my first fight in the UFC as far as my aggression going in. I called out Jasmine, told her she did a great job in her last fight against Gabriella. And, I thought she looked good. And she's one of those people that's kind of knocking on the door trying to climb the ladder. And she jumped at the opportunity to take a fight against me. And people gave me crap about not calling out a top 15er, but I've done that about 20 times and that hasn't worked for me so far. I'm kind of in that weird bubble where nobody in the top 15 wants to fight me, nobody unranked wanted to fight me. And I was just waiting for someone to say yes, and the stars aligned.
I was gonna say, do you think you're in that kind of spot where a bunch of guys and girls sometimes find themselves who are like, you're on a roll, but because of the names, numbers, rankings, politics, they're just like, you're a good fight, but I could probably hold out for one of the sexier names, as they would say in the division.
I think that's it. And I'm also not a great matchup for a lot of the top 15. Like I'm a great grappler. I have good striking. I have a well rounded set. And a lot of top 15ers have like their one thing they're going to. We're still really developing the flyweight division. I think the top five are pretty solidified. But from there, it's kind of just a shoot of whoever won and lost the last few. So I think it would be a hard fight for some of the top 15ers as well, that don't want to take it. And then for the ones that aren't ranked, it's a big gamble.
I wanted to ask real quick on the Jasmine thing. I saw that play out like all of us did in real time on social media. How nice was it that Jasmine really was just so up for it? I think that was one of the things I found a little refreshing is that
Yeah.
you were kind of throwing logs on the fire, and then you see on her end, she's throwing the logs, she's posting the
Yeah.
graphics and all that. I mean, not all of the girls are necessarily gung-ho about doing that with you, Miranda. So how did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I was really happy that she was willing to. We were also talking behind the scenes as well. Fighting is an entertainment industry too. You need to put the hype behind it. I think we're both excited to fight each other, and it'll keep getting more exciting as we get closer. This was a long fight camp for both of us to get prepared and ready for. My hard stuff starts next week. I usually train the same amount every week, but the intensity will really kick up next week. Done with my travels. I went and saw family this week, and it was kind of like a reset for me. And now it's time to go.
Now, you've obviously been, pretty baked into the scene over there in Denver now for a minute. Can I ask how are things in terms of training and balancing? Obviously, as a young prospect, you're only getting better. You're only getting a lot of experience at this stage. And but I know you're obviously a very busy young woman, full time at Hershey, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, how is it balancing everything these days?
I've been balancing everything since I started fighting, since I was 18 years old. So it's a lot. It always is, but I'm happy to do it. The most fun thing is being able to teach seminars and private lessons here and there. The Hershey job is technically part time, but it's in between. It's like 25, 30 hours a week. So it depends, though. Some weeks I work 8 hours, other weeks I work 30 hours. It just depends on the season, for what I do with them. But it's easy for me to keep balanced. I have a very strict training schedule that I do the same routine pretty much every week, except for in fight camp. And then we just change intensity, change private lessons, things of that sort. Um, so yeah, it's easy, it's basic. My coaches keep me focused and help me to change the schedule when necessary. I have very key training partners that I train with nonstop, that keep me honest and that are going to be great partners heading into the sparring, this camp as a whole.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, one of your training partners who now is with you in Denver made the move, your little sister, Skyler Havoc Maverick. I know she just had if not her second, possibly her third fight. I know it didn't go her way, but I do want to ask you about that because when I talked to her about it, she talks about, kind of following the path and everything that you set for her. I mean, what's that like having little sis in the gym? Because obviously we see some siblings in the sport, but not too many with the girls. And I want to know what's that like for you two in particular.
Yeah, for me, it was a blessing to have her come out here. I was a little nervous to see how our dynamic would kind of work out. It's been a long time since we've lived together, basically. And so she's out here. I'm technically her landlord. She lives with me. She trains with me. And when she trains with me, it's like during her fight camps, I will train with her a lot. During mine, I don't train with her so much just because she isn't at that level yet. There are different levels to the game, and she's getting better and better as she goes. She's 3-1 now, so she's had 4 fights. This was her first real fight, like the first one that was an actual challenge. And it was close. We were in Texas and the Texas girl got the nod. But it was a close decision and she just never turned it on, had the kind of eyes glazed over. That's kind of what happens every once in a while for us, just don't have a great night in the cage. We have bad nights in the gym, and every once in a while it just happens to be on the same day we have a fight, and it sucks. But she's doing well. She's really coming back, learning a lot. We're going to take a few months off for her to learn, to develop, and then right back at it, And while we're in the back after she had lost, she was starting to do kind of a pity party thing or be like, hey, you've never lost this bad. You've never gotten hurt this bad. And here I am, only 4 fights in, I'm getting hurt. Like, she was upset about it. And it was hard for me to take, seeing my little sister go in there, following my footsteps, saying that, a lot of the reason she got into it was because of me hurts me. I'm like, oh, she got hurt, she lost, it's hard to watch, but it's a good learning opportunity. And I think this will be a good opportunity to see whether she bounces back and becomes one of the best in the world, or if she's going to let this loss get her down. And a lot of people struggle with that. And I think from the way that we were raised, she's not going to have any problems coming back and being even better.
Now, she did say you guys are a little more chill, but I can't help but wonder, uh, and if I'm a little wrong on this, correct me, but I feel like you have a very assertive personality, Miranda. I feel like if you show a little bit of tough love, it is because it's from a place of genuine, support. Like, I want this for you so bad that I get a little frustrated maybe when I convey it. When you're in there and you're helping Skylar, do you kind of big sister her a little bit, kind of like, Skylar, why don't you kill your room? Skylar, why don't you hit the pads like this? You know what I mean?
You aren't wrong. You aren't wrong at all. And I definitely do. It gets to the point it'll be like, man, I'm playing mom, I'm playing sister, I'm playing coach, I'm playing teammate. And we had to draw some lines. I actually talked to my coaches and my dad about it. And I was like, if it gets past a certain point, I'm just gonna throw it to my dad. Or if it gets past a certain point in training, I'm just gonna throw it to my coaches. Because she'd want me to corner me, but there's also a lot of I don't know, like frustration when I coach her in the gym. She'll be like, I know, or leave me alone, or whatever it is. We definitely get into little spats during training, especially if I'm sparring with her. But it's gotten a lot better over time, and I think it'll keep getting better. At first it was hard for me to have my dad in my corner, but then I got used to that. And I think by the end, it'll be a great dynamic. I'm going to support her no matter what. We have our tough days in the gym and we have our great days that it's just amazing to have each other in the gym.
I do want to ask you about the flyweight division. There's obviously been a lot going on. I'm gonna work chronologically backward with you. The fight, I know you saw it like I did, Andrea Lee and your good buddy Maycee Barber. I mean, what did you think of that one? I know that, like a lot of people, you did not think the judges got that one right.
Yeah, I think Andrea won, but I will say it was close. It was closer than my fight. The problem I had the most was the 30-27. Like, what the heck? No, not a 30-27. Like 29-28. I could have at least been like, maybe you could see it that way via control versus damage, even from bottom, but not 30-27, right? That was ridiculous. For me, it was a robbery. But the one against Andrea was a robbery. And I know it's the judge's fault. People are like, oh, you're blaming the fighter. I'm like, it's not the blame on the fighter. It's the attitude afterwards. When you lost or won a fight usually, and you definitely know when it's close. And instead of being like, yeah, I won and all cocky going on, you could at least acknowledge that it was a close fight, acknowledge the other person's talent, their ability. And that's my biggest problem with Maycee, and the fact that she won't accept a rematch. You know, like, why won't you accept a rematch? Are you scared of a rematch? Come on. You whined about not having an opponent and then you won't accept a rematch. Like, so that's really frustrating, but I'm going to come for that after my next fight.
To kind of expand a little bit on that, because I know I've seen it, I know it's a fight that you've pushed for. Is it
Mhm.
about her reaction? Is it that she's kind of maybe no sold the competitiveness of your bout with her, and now a little bit Andrea, I've seen a little bit. And maybe that's just a little bit of marketing. You don't want it to be like, hey, I'm winning. You want to look bigger than you are, sell the next fight, etc., etc. Is it that little bit of her reaction that's kind of that nags at you? I'll put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the kind of self-centered, just cocky attitude that nobody can touch her, when in reality, I don't even think she should be in the top 10 right now. But she's young, she's growing, and I have no doubts that eventually she would deserve the top 10. But they just handpick her fights a lot. I think that Andrea beat her. I think that I beat her, and she shouldn't be where she's at. And the way I see it is she's getting more money when it's a spot that was stolen from me. It's money that was stolen from me. You know, if somebody came and just stole that much money from me out of my purse or something, I would beat the crap out of them. And that's what I want to do to her for stealing my spot.
Now, can I ask if Mick, Sean, the powers that be said, "Hey, Miranda, who do you want next week? Molly McCann or Maycee?"
Probably Maycee.
Gotcha.
But that'll never happen. Like Molly, they've already said a strict no to. I don't see that ever happening unless she gets back in the top 15, which I also don't see happening anytime soon. The Maycee rematch is a possibility that I think would come in the future.
I do want to ask you about another one of your former foes.
Mhm.
Obviously, Erin Blanchfield doing very well, and the UFC and everybody riding high on her since she beat Jessica Andrade. When I think about that fight that you guys had, and I know there was a little bit of a whole, you subbing in for another, training partner and all that, the way that fight came together. When you look back on that fight and maybe you see, where she's at now, do you feel like that one was maybe a more interesting gauge of where you are personally in terms of your skills and growing as a martial artist?
That fight for me was an off night. I don't want to take skills away from Erin. First, I do think she's very good. I think she's an amazing grappler. I think she has a bright future ahead of her. But I think during our fight, I was very much focused on the striking. I did underestimate her going into there. I was like, her grappling's good, but it's not that good. And I just wasn't ready for working on bottom as much as I should have been. I had never really been put on bottom in a fight, especially like jujitsu wise. I've been put against the cage on bottom by Deanna Bennett in the past, but never anything like that. And I just wasn't prepared. I didn't train correctly for it, and we went back to the drawing board and train. Nobody can really hold me down anymore, and I don't ever want that to be the case again. Now Erin's going up. Every time she succeeds, I see it as a great thing for me because it makes me look better, I guess, in the long run. But at the same time, I want to be able to have that rematch eventually too. I won't say it's going to be this fight or the next fight or anything like that, but down the road, she'll be in the top 5. She'll be contending for the title for a while, I assume, because a lot of people in this division don't have the grappling to keep up. The Jessica Andrade fight, though, I don't think was a clear description of her talents. I think Jessica was off the sofa chilling at the beach when they called her for the short notice fight. And she's a pretty big girl. She probably had a really hard weight cut and was partying right after the Lauren Murphy fight and came in on that short notice and just wasn't prepared and also underestimated Erin. And, got a big paycheck for it regardless.
I want to ask two things on that before we move on from Erin. Uh, a lot of these girls not going the distance with her. I'd assume, like you just said, it kind of makes you look better, the fact that she did have to go the full 15 minutes with you. And then secondly, when you think about her grappling, that's what kind of everyone is focused on. She's obviously well-rounded like yourself, but people talk about, well, if you have to pick out what is Erin Blanchfield's quote main weapon, it's that grappling when she gets on top of you. When you look back on your fight, when you look at the division, do you feel the same? Do you feel like she's got that's probably the biggest mountain that everybody in that top 5 also has to climb against Erin?
I think Erin and Talia are two of the best in the division as far as striking, as far as having, or I'm sorry, as far as grappling and having that as their main weapon. I think Talia is very good too, and I think that's a very interesting fight that they should make in the near future.
And then I do want to ask, obviously, Valentina Shevchenko losing to Alexa Grasso. Was that a shock to you, or did you feel like, you know what, people are just counting out the wrong girl in this one in Alexa?
I was shocked as well. I thought Alexa was good. I thought that size was going to be the biggest problem in that fight. Alexa's fairly small for the flyweight division, and you could see that very clearly against like Maycee Barber and now against Valentina. And she did a very good job. Her speed in that fight was next to none. You know, she did a great job with that. And then just her striking cleanness, being able to have the accuracy while she was striking, and then to be able to hold her own in the grappling. It was a great fight. She did a good job.
And then I think when I look at that fight, I do, respectfully to Alexa, she did get to the ground and submit this dominant champion. But stylistically, I couldn't help but think that the Erins, Tylas, yourself, a lot of the more grappling heavy flyweights had to have been almost licking their chops a little bit when you think about a striker being the champion, as opposed to maybe more well-rounded threat on paper in Valentina. I mean, when you think about that, when you think about that change of hands, does that feel a little more motivating? Like, hey, suddenly the path to that belt might be a little bit shorter than it was a month ago.
Yeah, I think it definitely opened up the fact that she's not invincible, you know, but I think I figured that out back when Jennifer Maia fought her. You know, she beat her for one round at least, and she was able to take her down and control on top for a little bit. And I think that showed, okay, you can take her down. It's a possibility. She does have some weaknesses. And when I say weaknesses, I think that Valentina is one of the best well-rounded people in entire women's MMA. That's not what I mean. But she does have spots where you could get her in. There's places where other people dominant in one area can challenge her and do better. And we saw that with Alexa. She caught her and got on her back from just, you know, a 2-second mistake, but that's all it takes.
As we round home, Miranda, people talk about this young prospect. Suddenly, you guys are not so young anymore. You guys are not so little anymore. You guys are developing into, bona fide flyweight contenders over there at 125. What do you want for this year? What do you want people to be talking about when we enter 2024?
Maybe in the top 10. You know, I'm hoping that I get out of the top 15, keep moving my way up. I hope to have 3 fights by the end of this year. This will just be my first one in June. So we're 6 months into the year already. I'm hoping I can get 2 more pretty quickly after this. We'll see what happens with that though. And I'm hoping to be knocking on the door of the top 10, if not being already there, and slowly work my way up the ladder starting in 2024.
Finally, what can fans expect when you get in the cage with Jasmine Jasudavicius?
Seeing me as well-rounded as you ever have and more aggressive than you ever have. I plan on being the dominant pushing one. She's used to being the one kind of holding the middle of the cage and pushing others back, letting them work around her. And she hasn't really faced a bully yet. You know, Gabriella tried to be, but she didn't have the ground game to back it up. And I do.
Well, Miranda, we're all looking forward to it very much. Thank you again for the time and best of luck. Once again, this June, Miranda Maverick, Jasmine Jasudavicius. Guys aren't going to want to miss it.